Strike a
How do you know when it's time to leave a program?
helping hand.
I'm going to be talking about 5 specific cases, not real life cases, but just 5 different situations that could come up and how you might react to that. But I do want to say it's something that's very personal. There's not a right or wrong answer for every individual, for every case, because there's so many different things. For example, someone who's independently wealthy or almost independently wealthy maybe can afford to take 3 months off of teaching and take their time to go look for something. And other people may be needing that money to pay their rent or support their kids. I just know when I look back at my own experience, 2 of my schools, I'm in my 4th school now. I'm there half-time. I'm retired or semi-retired. But the first 2 schools I was at both of those 2 years too long. One was 7 years total, and one was 13 years total. The 3rd school I was at was for 5 years, and that one was just right. I started feeling in my 5th and final year, I started feeling like I did in my 5th year or I started feeling like I did 2 years before I left the other ones, and that those were in their best situations in some ways during that time. And this 3rd school I was at this last year was actually my best year there, and things were going great. I had the best 6th grade band I had in my entire career, and I thought, why am I wanting to leave? But I just knew that it was right. And it was the right time for me to retire. I wish I would have had that knowledge when I was younger. So be careful on social media sites, because I see a lot of times where someone's really asking a question about something, and some of the responses are sometimes, "Oh, I'd quit today if I were you." And it's like you don't know. What you want to do is you want to talk to someone who's going to mostly ask you questions. And I actually provide free coaching. The first call is free anyway, and there's a sign-up thing to schedule a call in the show notes. So look for that. But let's get on to the material. The first case might be if you're extremely sick physically, or have some kind of illness in your family, and maybe a close family member, or there has been some kind of tragedy. Sometimes you have to take that time off to take care of either yourself or a family member or a child or whatever the case might be. These are very tragic situations when this happens. And what I would look for is, I know in every district that I've been in, there's a procedure to be able to take a leave of absence. And so that's what I would suggest you look into in those cases. If you have a union in your district, definitely talk to them. But look at taking a leave of absence. This is going to let you be able to step back into your role when the time of tragedy or illness is over. And a lot of times these can be even up to a year. I'm not an expert on it, but I know the Family Medical Leave Act, you might look at what that covers and ask if it fits under that umbrella there. Number 2, if you're asked to do something illegal or immoral. I remember one time, so this wasn't quite exactly like this, but one time we had a type of show for the young men at a high school I was at, and it just got to be really out of hand. The boys were dressing nasty. They were doing suggestive dances, and it just kept getting worse and worse every year. And then when my son was in high school, I really had a hard time with it. And finally, a parent sent an all-school email talking about how upset they were about it. And I just responded to the email and said, I agree with this parent, and we need to do something. This has gotten out of hand. Well, the principal got mad at me and wrote me up. I don't even remember what it was for. It was kind of a stupid reason. And she told me that the superintendent was livid at me. Well, that was like hanging over my head for months. And it really bothered me. And finally, and this was like in April of the end of a school year, that following fall, I asked for an appointment with the superintendent, and he had no idea what I was talking about. once I kind of explained it to him, he said, "Oh, I might have been a little bit mad that at the whole situation, but he couldn't even remember what it was about." And I'm glad that I had set up that meeting with him. So if you're asked to do something illegal, immoral, what I would do is take it over that person's head. So if it's a principal or a department chair, just go over their head with it. And yes, it's possible you might get in trouble, but it's important to do the right thing in that case. So those two are more of something that you might have to leave a job immediately. These next couple of situations would be something that maybe you leave at the end of the school year. It really depends. Like I said, every situation is very personal and very different, and you have to figure it out in consultation, hopefully with someone you can talk to in person or on the phone. Please don't try to handle things like this on social media. So case number 3 might be when you ask for something and it's not happening. You have to decide, how important is it to you? So the first teaching position I was at, I got to grow a band program basically from nothing. And I had a 4th grade band, a 5th grade band, a middle school band. Well, the middle school band, the first year I was there, had about 10 students. And after a few years, we grew to 35 students. And then there was nothing. It was a K through 12 school. There was nothing for the kids in high school. And I kept asking for a high school band, and it was not happening. And finally, my final year there, they said, "James, it's not going to happen, so quit asking for it." And that was a very important aspect for me to build the program to the next level. So that helped me cement my decision to resign at the end of that school year. So you have to ask, how important is it for you? And a lot of times what you're going to find is that things that seemed important when you were younger are not as important when you get older. The 3rd school I was at, the principal, I had a lot of support from the principal, and almost anything I asked for, he would do, but I also was different as well. Almost anything he asked of me, I would try to do. And he knew that the things that I said, no, I can't do that. He knew that that was really something I had thought through, and it wasn't just that I was saying no to everything. So I guess I was saying at that position, I had learned how to compromise, when to compromise, what things not to compromise about, all those kind of things like that. So number 3, when you ask for something and it's not happening, how important is that? Is it important enough to leave the program? Now, the interesting thing is that first school, when I left there, the things that I was asking for years, they ended up incorporating those things. So I don't know if the new director, if he said these are some important things to have in the program, but they did incorporate those things. And he is there now. He is in his 19th year there. So obviously that has worked out. Number 4, when you are overworked. I mean, I would not leave a position suddenly over this unless they're asking you to work 90 hours a week. But this often happens gradually. This happened to me at my first school and my second school, where I became kind of burnt out, because as you are successful, success often brings this out, because you start having more things that you're doing with your groups, and you're still doing all the old things. But if you have a good principal, you can sometimes work this out and just have a time where you sit down with them and you say, you know what, I'm just feeling overwhelmed. I have a lot going on. We've had the program become successful, and as we've grown, it's taking more and more of my time. So find out what the goals of the principal is. See if that aligns with what your goals are. Sometimes you'll find out that they just don't know. They haven't figured out all the time that's involved. And so it's your job to educate your principal, educate your athletic director about the time that these things take. Because sometimes great ideas are hatched in a conference room from people who have no no idea. So sometimes someone will say, oh, we have 2 kids interested in guitar, so let's start a guitar program. Okay, well, how about what's it going to take with the teacher's time? Does the teacher have experience in that? Are we willing to send them to a workshop? Are we going to have the kids get their own guitars, or is the school going to buy them? So sometimes all those things have not been hashed out, and this is when you can help with that and maybe even help them realize that the schedule is not workable. And sometimes that can happen as you are thinking about taking a job, or when you're interviewing. So that takes me to case number 5. Unless you absolutely need a specific job because you're trying to support your family, sometimes it's good to be a little bit picky when you're interviewing. So the halftime job I'm at now, I'll give you a couple of examples. The halftime job I'm at now, when I was interviewing, they told me they wanted to start a band program. And so I told them some of the things that it's going to take with starting a band program, and I told them some of the things that it's going to take to maintain the success of that program, including having leveled bands based on levels of the kids and not on their grade level. And they're very open to all of that. They've given me a pull-out program so that I can pull out 3 to 4 kids every day to work with them during their study hall. And every kid has study hall in this particular school, and every kid has 2 electives. And I'm now in my 2nd month there, and it is working out really good. I feel like my beginners are way past any beginners I've had in the 25 years previously. And it's not because the kids are better or anything like that, but just because we have a really good program in place to make it work. There was a school I had interviewed at probably about 18 years ago, and it was a K through 12 position, and they said, we want to build and expand our band program. And the interview process was going really well, but they were not open to changing anything. They wanted to keep the position mostly as a K through 12 while building a band program. And I gave them a proposal of how to maybe kind of change that a little bit, maybe a little bit less of the general music so that the band could be focused on, and actually the proposal I had given them involved band and choir. So those would kind of be the focal points of the middle school and high school, and then general music would take a little bit of a back seat to everything, but it would still happen, just not at the level that they had expressed. And please, if you're a general music teacher, I'm not saying in any way that stuff's not important. I'm just saying if you have one person in a 450 kid district trying to teach everybody music, and the goal of the program is we want to grow the band program, it's not going to happen without some compromise. So don't judge me on this. So they didn't accept my proposal, and I didn't accept the position. And here we are 18 years later, and I see that position open about every 2 years. So they're on their 9th or 10th director or teacher in that amount of time. So whatever they're doing is not working, but they're not figuring it out. So when you go for an interview, think about what is important to you and ask some penetrating questions of the program, because you're going to find out you have a better chance of success if you know what you're getting into and if they know what they're asking, rather than just taking a position because you need a job. Although I know sometimes that's necessary. But when I turned down this district I was just talking about, I was jobless. I had already resigned from my previous position, and I was interviewing like in April and May of that year. So I already knew I didn't have a job because I told my school I was going to leave at the end of May. I hope that these tips have been helpful to you to know when is it time to leave. And remember, there is no right or wrong always answer. It's very, very personal.
The Music Ed Podcast, where you get quick and easy tips for how to be or better band teacher.